Welcome to the Software People Stories. I'm Shiv.
I'm Chitra.
And I'm Gayatri.
We bring you interesting, untold stories of people
Associated with the creation
Or consumption of software-based solutions.
You'll hear stories of what worked,
and sometimes what didn't,
you will also hear very personal experiences.
and insights that would trigger your thoughts
And inspire you to do even greater things.
It's been a while since I hosted a podcast, so this one became really special for me, and doubly so as I had a chance to catch up with a former colleague, Baiju Joseph, a product operations leader with nearly 3 decades of experience. His career in technology and software development, coupled with an intense focus right from the beginning on learning, doing the right thing, finding innovative means, adopting the best to maximize impact to customers and the business, and more, are all part of Baiju's essence. Listen on to experience it on this episode of the Software People Stories podcast.
Good morning and a good evening to you, Baiju. A very warm welcome to you on the Software People Stories podcast. I've been looking forward to our conversation ever since you gave us the go-ahead, and I'm excited having been colleagues with you and having known you for over 2 decades. So a very warm welcome to you to the Software People Stories.
Good morning, Chitra. Hey, thanks for inviting.
Baiju, all of our guests have their own stories behind how they got into the world of computing, technology, computer science, and other technologies. So where did you start? How did you decide that you wanted a career in technology? Why did you choose to study what you studied? And how did you get into this space?
This is a great question. I've done engineering, electronics and communication engineering. So during that days, I'm sure a lot of things, we don't know what really we want to do. My first admission was into mechanical engineering. That's what I got initially. Then few months, luckily, I got electronics. I changed to electronics and studied electronics. But during that course, I studied Fortran and COBOL. I still remember studying that. And that kind of given me an indication that that's something which I want to do. But unfortunately, I could not really get a job break into that. One of my big initial job was working with All India Radio as a broadcasting engineer. So I kept my passion alive. I started learning Java on part-time, going to a polytechnic. I started applying. I used to apply and never got anything during the 5 years. But I think the break came when I came to Bangalore. Novell was hiring. I learned C myself. I learned Java myself when I was in All India Radio. I applied some of this knowledge and built some solutions and software which was kind of useful for the office. And the break was getting into Novell, and that, I think, big career breakthrough.
At Novell, I know you started out in the role of a system test engineer. And how did that pan out? Some of your significant takeaways, if you reflect where you are today from those days. And how did that pave the path for you to take on other roles and challenges in your career?
2 things really come to my mind. One is the basic foundation we got in the system testing team. It was more like a software testing university with a lot of laboratory kind of experiences. So I always felt Novell is like a very advanced software testing university. During that time, some of the latest things were taught, and we practice, we continuously improve what we do. So that's number one. And I'm glad that later our manager Srini, he went on to write a book on system testing, and which has become a book in universities in India and China and many other places. So that's just because of the kind of work what we're doing and the kind of work what he was leading with even leaders like JV on this area, system testing and overall testing space. So that's number one. And that really helped because some of that foundations we got on software testing, software engineering principles at Novell, that really helped. And it's even today, it's kind of helping me. The second one is training we got on leadership. So Novell usually identify future leaders, and they have this 1 week kind of training and then separate grooming sessions. So I was lucky enough to get selected into that and going through that program, and that has even given an amazing foundation for some of the leadership practices, learning from leaders like JV. I think almost all the directors. Vikram was an amazing leader. I think one picture still comes into my mind. The Novell cafeteria was on the 4th floor, and afternoons you will see this Vikram running and going up. That kind of energy, the way he motivated, the way he talked to people. So there's a lot of leadership lessons and the software testing and software engineering lessons, what we got from Novell. It kind of acted as a university, and I don't remember kind of getting that kind of training and coaching any of my other experiences later.
Certainly, Baiju, I can empathize with a lot of what you said. And I believe that I've personally benefited from that kind of exposure and grounding in my career, certainly. From then on, you moved to a very, very different environment, and you had to take on somewhat of a leadership role for a whole company. What was that like? And I can imagine that you would have had to balance both leading teams, delivering, and running a company. What was that experience like? What are some of the hits and misses from that you can share with us?
Yeah, this is Ariba. After three and a half years with Novell, I moved to Ariba. Ariba, I was, if I remember correctly, I may be employee number 20 or something in their Indian operations. So during the early days, it's not like established. We don't have the computers and IT set up properly. We don't have an MD yet. There's no India director yet. And even there's no proper cafeteria set up. You need to figure it out. How are you going to get the lunch for the employees? So there is a lot of basic stuff. So when I joined, my initial responsibility was to set up a quality engineering team for one of the CD products, one of the flagship Ariba products. But later, I think within three months itself, I've been asked to set up many other teams, QE team, release engineering team, and later the upgrade lab, where Ariba was moving from CD to SaaS, so that upgrade lab for that. So it's a different types of experience, even the customer support, customer escalation engineering team. But meantime, while the engineering and that related work, there's a lot of help could give to setting up teams here. The other struggle was there's no proper leadership here. And a company decided to create a steering committee to run the Indian operations. And one of the VP came from US and working with the HR and all the other managers. So we initially selected, I remember, like 5 or 6 of us as the steering committee to run the operations here. And I've been nominated as a first rotating chair for the first quarter. So I think that's a place where we were started talking, how will we set up recognition practices? How will we set up hiring practices? How will we set up compensation practices? So I could kind of touch upon a lot of things, and there are people from US who was kind of helping and guiding that gave an experience of looking at 360 degree of company. I still remember some of the days you may need to go and clean up your desk yourself because that's not really properly set up. We were also able to be part of the team to hire the head of India, the MD for India. That is an amazing experience, hiring your own manager. It's a lot of learning, and I'm glad that some of the foundations and cultural practices which we set up, some of the employees whom we hired there, and the team, like 80% of the team I set up is still there. I think it's because we had this bonding, which the culture and the bonding we created. A lot of them are grown up as like VPs and directors and doing great. So I think it's more about the 360 degree learning, setting up an establishment in Bangalore. At the same time, focusing a lot on culture, building the teams on the culture and the people perspectives.
That's incredible, Baiju. In fact, I have never probably asked you this question. We never probably had the opportunity during our times of meeting to actually explore what that experience like. So thank you so much for sharing that. In fact, there is probably one question that I will see if we could address further in this conversation, and it's around culture, which is typically the hardest to shift, let's say, in an existing organization if it needs to. And even while establishing it, I'm sure that you must have had significant challenges. But before that, I know you to be someone who truly adopted, the principles and values of Agile, and you've tried to bring them to a lot of what you do at work. How did you imbibe these? Because a lot of times people tend to think of values and principles as things that are up there. And how to translate those into practices in your daily life and work become challenging. So, how did you take these on, imbibe them, and actually make them part of your ways of working?
Great question, Chitra. Great question. I think I want to put some background before we starting. So in Novell, it was waterfall. There are most of the releases like 9 months, 1 year long CD releases. So it's like the old waterfall style. That's what was happening. But when I joined Ariba, we were an offshore team, setting up an offshore team. But in America at that time, Ariba has hired one of the inventors of Scrum, Jeff Sutherland, to coach Ariba as is their main mentor to set up how to set up distributed Agile, because Agile and Scrum was initially, when it was in the early 2000s, when it was coined, it was primarily for co-located teams. And this is like 2003, 2004, where they're trying to see, hey, how can we do Agile on a distributed mode where we have teams in India and we have teams in America? How can we do that? So two people who are driving the Agile adoption that time in Ariba, one is, of course, Jeff Sutherland as a coach, and Craig Federighi, who was the CTO of Ariba. Craig Federighi is now the head of Apple engineering. If you go and look at a lot of this Apple tech announcements, you'll see Craig there. So they were driving the way how can we do Agile, and I still remember there will be drama shows and showcases and mainly making people understand the value of Agile, primarily dividing and conquering, early feedback loops. It's like once you start seeing the value and the results from that, I think that's why I became passionate about it. And I could clearly see, especially I still remember we used to run, I think it's 3 weeks or 2 weeks sprint. I don't exactly remember, but end of the sprint, the entire company, it's a Monday morning, if I remember, will come and demo in a 1 hour meeting. There'll be a lot of food and the VPs and a lot of people will be there, and the demos are demo. They're not like PPTs. The real working software get demoed every 3 weeks. And this is very different from what we've seen in Novell, where we see the working product after 8 months. So the real value and the results of Agile really got into my heart. And I become so passionate about this and started reading a lot, started experimenting the distributed Agile. How can we make it work? That's some of the basics, how it started and how I got passionate about Agile. And then based on that, I think a lot of work, what we have done in Ariba India and Ariba US teams together, we started experimenting, fine-tuning based on the inputs given by the teams in America. And we tried to do that, and we started seeing amazing results.
How did you actually get teams to sort of imbibe those principles and values of Agile? When you say trust and respect and empowering teams, and translate that into the way you work with, always have a demonstrable product that you can show your customers, always be open to feedback, anticipate change in requirements, and you sort of iteratively build your product. How do you get people to actually come on board with these and make it part of their working?
Yeah, in this case, the Agile in Ariba in the early days, I think a lot of credit go to the team, the leadership team who drove. So if you look at the CTO was driving it, and the CTO was passionate about it, and the entire engineering leadership. So it was more like the senior leadership. They completely bought into the value. They understood it, then they practiced it, and it's not like textbook training. You go for a 1-day training or a 2-day training. It's rather they use a lot of innovative ways. As I told, one of the things was they will conduct some street drama kind of stuff where we will understand the value of Agile. They will not talk about software, rather a drama to kind of bring out how a divide and conquer or early feedback loop kind of thing can add value. Because Agile is not just for software. Agile can be applied in many places. A vegetable vendor can use it, a construction company can use it, can be anywhere. So they simplified the value and the results of Agile. They simplified through these kind of initiatives. So from the top down, they were taking this initiative. So because of that, a lot of us and even the entire teams, they started seeing the value. So I think a lot of credit go to the senior leadership. So I don't think I have played anything on this. I was a learner during that. So teams got into this because we saw the value of it.
That's interesting. And yes, also could relate to a lot of it where it says that any change, whether it's mindset, behaviors, which is largely make them work and then ultimately you're able to see the results, starts with, the leadership. And then everybody sort of rallies around it because they know that their leaders are also invested in doing the right thing. From then on, when you look at, this is a question that is close to my heart because it talks about building the right product and also getting to understand customers. So, and these two go hand in hand. While building engineering products, what have been some experiences that have worked for you and what have been things that you wished you had done better or done differently that you could share with respect to building products from the ground up?
Great question. So I'll talk about some of the recent stuff what I done. So after Ariba, I moved to Yahoo. Yahoo hired me to lead the quality engineering practices for the emerging market countries. And then I went on to do release engineering. Been asked to lead the engineering development team for Yahoo web hosting product, which is like half the revenue for the Yahoo small business. The director for the web hosting product, he was leaving. So I asked my VP, hey, I can help you until you hire somebody. And this team was doing not so much of development. It's a very old product, very legacy product. So the only duty that time was to work with the contracting team to migrate the tech stack from an old Unix to a new Unix. That was the primary work. There was no proper, lot of active development was happening. So later what happened is things got changed and we were in a juncture. We decided, okay, it's not only just migrating the tech stack migration, but can we start looking at what really customers want? And then by this time, I also kind of evolved my thought process. So one side there is Agile, but I become a big fan of Simon Sinek. I'm sure you would have heard about the Start With Why by Simon Sinek.
I'm a fan as well.
So I got it through one of the leadership training at Yahoo, and I felt that's common sense. You start with why. That's the way the brain thinks. That's very easy to kind of communicate with your team and the people around you, to the customers. And why can't we start doing why instead of starting with the what? I think I've internalized a lot about the start with why. The belief systems, and that's the most important. If you, your team, and your customers, if you can have the same belief systems, then it resonates well between you and your team and your customers. And then based on that, we can decide how you really want to do it, the approach of doing it, the strategy of doing it, that you can develop once you have the belief system and the whys are solidified. And at the end, you can get a good end product or something. So I started putting customers at the center of every discussions, be it with my team. We started putting customer at the center of this why. And we started developing this belief system. I think it's like a pledge or oath before most of our quarterly planning meetings and annual meetings. We believe that whatever we do is to deliver value to customers with quality at speed. And we started evolving it later. We started doing that. And in one of these 2015 meetings, we told, hey, we need to now get out of just tech stack migration. We need to start delivering value to customers. We started, I think there's an amazing exercise we done with our team. We involved customer care because they understand the feedback from the customers directly. We involved them. We involved the customer escalation team. We involved the development and the QE, the UED people. And we started listing down what do we really want to give to our customers in this coming year. And the number one, I think we called P0 that time, was the website editor, which we were offering for the customers, could not build a website which is mobile friendly in 2015 because the editor was so old. It's like a 10-year, 12-year-old technology stack. So we want to do that, but at the same time, our team was a pretty small team. We started looking at the option because our hosting infrastructure was some of the best in the world that time, but this editor was very old. So you're looking for an editor who can plug in. We know we cannot build it with our own team because the companies like Wix or Weebly or Squarespace, they're huge teams building this editor. So we're looking for options, somebody who can plug into our architecture. So we done a lot of pilots with different vendors, and we found some company who can work with them. It's very advanced one. I think it's like, I think getting the pilot approved with our VPs, and then running the entire program with 8 Scrum teams within Yahoo Small Business, including, so I had my own Scrum team for hosting. Then there are bringing in other 6, 7 Scrum teams, because it's a huge integration work. And this vendor who is outside of America, and releasing the first, I think we used to have weekly demos, and we will bring in the VPs and all the people come see the demo, play with the products, and we were able to build it week by week, smaller steps together. And within 4 months, we could release our internal release, the first playable version for a lot of our internal users. After a few months, we had a solid beta release, and we conducted contests among our own engineers so that we get a lot more feedback. And within 1 month, we kind of went and released. And then we had 2-year roadmap. And today that product has become the center of a lot of our strategy. That product has become a lot of strategy. So one reason it worked is because I think there are 2 things. One is we are able to bring in customer at the center of whatever we've done. And the other one is that overall agile way of doing it. So we were able to get the feedback. The VPs were in this meeting. So we clearly told them, this is a place for you to give the feedback, not after 3 months or 4 months. So we were able to showcase a lot of people. We also had this practice called group testing. After the demo, teams will go back and play and then give the feedback. We file a bug, and if there are blockers, we fix it immediately before the next sprint start and all. And this is something which we learned from Ariba. I think this is something which really worked well, and something which not really worked. I think this is my priority Yahoo when we were kind of doing the CD to SaaS migration for some of the products. A lot of things were new. And there were a lot of CD customers, which are like Fortune 500s and Fortune 1000s. Their use cases are things very different for different customers. And now we are trying to build this product into a SaaS version where we cannot customize. If it is a CD product, I think there is an amazing practice to customize it heavily. Now, when you want to convert that into SaaS, and again, I'm talking about 2006, 2007 kind of time frame, where the SaaS is just evolving. That was a big challenge. How will you even test it, the different scenarios, what customers want? And unfortunately, could not really understand what kind of customization possible when we release, what customers will really ask. It was like an open-ended question in a lot of cases. And we kind of learned over time in releasing sometimes, and then, oh man, it's not going to work. And then we need to go fine-tune sometimes the architecture, sometimes the way we test it. It would have been better if we know, and this is like we are building for the future. This is not like we are going to copy something existing, but this is building on this new SaaS infrastructure, bringing an existing product to a new product, and then building customizability into SaaS during the early days of the SaaS evolution. Yeah, I think that's something which I could have, now if I look at maybe in the requirement stage itself, maybe you could have looked at a lot more deeper into the customizability aspect and the QE getting involved a lot more into that discussions, and then trying to create different kind of data sets, which we could not really do during the 2005, 2006 timeframe. And we got into troubles. I know some of these implementations, we got into avoidable issues.
Interesting, Baiju. And often things like these become our learning or aha moments. I think that leads into my next question in terms of there seems to be a lot more appreciation for using events of failure, as I like to call them, because failure to me is just an event, as ways of learning quickly and rapidly. Today, given the rate of change of things, what in your opinion calls for a culture that supports or has a tolerance for failure? Let's say today you have a lot more mechanisms to do things like instrument your code, pick up customer inputs as early as possible in their awareness, usage, and adoption journey of a product. But yet there are points where, things may really not go the right way. So, building that culture of tolerance and failure, but learning quickly and making those continuous improvements. how does one build that into an organization?
So this is the place where I think that the new way of working, a lot of this DevOps practices comes in place. So 2018, we were building microservices. We are kind of moving a lot of our stack to microservices. And I was driving the Kubernetes adoption of this microservices that time with the team. I was kind of the DevOps council's chair and driving it. So I've done a lot of reading and learning about Kubernetes and using Spinnaker for canary deploys. So the canary, we introduced canary practices. So in the canary, the beauty is, you can have the current version running on one side, and then when you have the new version coming, what we used to do in the canary deploy, we sent a small percentage of traffic. It can be 2%, it can be 5% or 10%. Send a small percentage of traffic. And there is a concept called canary confidence factor, which is based on a lot of signals from the system, which is based on the real customers. So while there are a lot of testing practices, shift left practices, which we do to ensure, we done a lot of shift left stuff. And it's like almost zero touch pipeline what we created. And we had the unit tests should be 75% code coverage. I don't believe in the number, but we used to know that we are able to bring in this culture for this microservices team where we write the unit test to ensure it acts as a safety net for that code, rather than getting this number. And teams started building unit tests with that culture. What happened is the numbers started becoming 75 and 80s and 90s. Unit tests are typically very fast to execute and easy to maintain. So while we done a lot of shift left, and we had sonar queue practices where the code quality, the security aspects, then we had X-ray scan on the packages. And so there are a lot of shift left aspects we brought in. The QE will do the testing team, we call QE, quality engineering. Testing team will automate along with the sprint. If there's a new microservice getting developed, the automation for that is actually happening in the same sprint. That's one of our exit criteria for the sprint. The smoke for that get automated during the same sprint. So a lot of shift left. At the same time, we were able to get some of these practices where don't deploy the new version so that customers see that full. Rather, we send only a small percentage of traffic, and based on the canary confidence factor, then promote it gradually. So that kind of concept, some of these industry practices and the container and the Kubernetes kind of technology kind of gives us that freedom, which was not available. If you look at during Novell's time or early Ariba's time, I don't think that kind of industry was not matured into that. But today, we have a lot of that options available, and we were able to use some of that. And all these shift left practices and this canary practices, what we deployed in our overall culture and the practices, we were able to improve the speed of delivery. It got improved by roughly by 40+%. Our production incidents were going down year over year by around 38%.
It's interesting because I was actually looking at some of your older articles, and I think this brought together the confluence of people, process, and technology very nicely. So thank you for that. We usually look at what our guests would like to leave as messages for aspirants who want to get into the world of tech. And someone like you who's had almost 3 decades of experience across so many functions. You played several different roles. You pretty much even set up offices. What would be your advice or messages for young people who want to get into the world of technology?
I think that one of the most important thing in the technology is the technology changes almost every day. And the practices will be different. If you look at every quarter or every year, there are new things coming up. So one of the most important thing is if you want to kind of excel in a tech world, we should have this self-learning kind of a culture where while we are working on something currently, but at the same time, keep an eye on state of the art, learn and play, and then bring in, if you think that, this is going to add value to the company and to our customers, try to start piloting and be that leader, be that, innovator for your team so that ultimately customers will get value. I think that's the way, for example, I was telling about this Kubernetes and the canary. We could have really done just a normal AWS deployment and could have left with it without even a Kubernetes stuff. But if the technology has evolved, I think it's time to learn and apply it. I think that's one of the key message. Keep always your time open to learn new things and then apply and work with your leaders to kind of pilot and take it forward.
Yeah, I hope that learning becomes a way of life, because like you said, technology is changing so fast. Sometimes it becomes overwhelming as well, and you feel, are you learning enough? Do you know enough? Will what I know today be relevant tomorrow, given that so many things are now being automated? And with the advent of AI, a lot of what people were doing is going to be accomplished much faster by algorithms. So what do you think are things that people can develop to stay relevant and use their human faculties, if you will, at work to obviously, build great products, continue to build great products, find fulfilling careers?
Yeah, it takes me back to what I learned in Novell. I still remember this one of this interviewing skills training. One of the leaders, one of the directors, he was taking this class, and one of the message I got it from there and still carry with me: hire for attitude and train for skills. Hire for attitude and train for skills. I think it's that attitude. There's this positive attitude. Life is not going to be 100% full. I usually tell people about this half-filled glass story. There will be emptiness always. You can be sad by looking at the emptiness, but you can be happy by just looking at what we have and dream for that emptiness part. You want to fill that with something else. So keep that positive attitude in whatever you do. At the same time, the skill can be learned. And today, I mean, there's a lot of options. You have multiple options available to learn, be it AI, be it any tech stack. You can do hands-on, you can learn. So I think the two important things is while learning new things, but at the same time, keep a very positive attitude towards your work, your life, and things around you and the people around you. And we are here to help each other. It's not like don't look towards you, just always look outside to lead your life, to support each other, and the place where you work will be a lot more better and happier place.
Thank you very much, Baiju. I appreciate it. And I want to say with this, thank you so much for your time. I think this was a great conversation. I hope we can have a lot more conversations in the future on various topics. Thank you.
Hey, thank you, Chitra. Thanks for this opportunity.
We thank Siddharth for the music and Anita for promoting the Software People Stories.
If you like this episode,
Please subscribe on your favorite podcast client.
And spread the word in your network.
if you'd like to share your story,
Contact us at podcasts@pm-powerconsulting.com.